SOAL Night Live, number 23. Tonight our guest is Umphrey's McGee drummer, Kristofer Myers. And my co-host tonight is my old friend, Dustin Fennell. So without further ado, here's Kris. Yeah, I dig your halo back there. That looks cool.
The halo?
Yeah, there you go. That's so
Yeah,
great.
there you go.
That's so saintly. Yeah, exactly.
How we doing?
You're doing good. Good to see you, brother. It's been a while.
It's good to see you again, Sean. How you been?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there, man. You know, this is such an unusual time. But, you know, as musicians, you know, it's not the worst thing, you know. Well, it depends on what you're doing. I mean, if you're touring, it's definitely the worst thing ever. But if you have time to create and record, you know, this is a great time for that. And I think a lot of people will have new albums coming out in 6 months or a year.
Oh, yes.
From this time
I'm sure
period.
there'll be lots of new albums and new releases. So it's exciting for that, I guess. But it's also just, you know, just a sign of the times of what we, try to do for some kind of stride in some kind of way, you know.
Absolutely, you know, and it's also unpredictable right now, but fingers crossed that we can get back to what we do best, you know.
Yes.
Before too long. So, how are things in your world?
It's cool. I'm in Nashville, not too far from you.
How long?
I've been here for the last 3.5 years now.
Okay.
Yeah. So things are going very well. I love the scene here. Just like living here a lot. It's people are very friendly and very, very hospitable, and like, you know, the industry in itself is, I'm learning, you know, to find it's friendlier than other industries. You know, it's an exciting city to be in because it's growing, you know.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be a city, like a future metropolis, if you ask me. I think a lot of people are moving here by the hundreds of each month. And I'm glad I got here when I did.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I get up that way occasionally, you know. It's just 4 hours from Atlanta. And
sure.
It's always fun to come up there. Sometimes I just come up to see a show. I came up, as a matter of fact, the last show I saw before the world went to shit was at the Ryman. I saw the Tubes, you know.
Oh, cool.
Talk to you later and all that stuff.
That's great.
Yeah, they were kind of a bucket list kind of thing, and they were opening. Totally. They were opening for Loverboy, but it was a long drive back, so we didn't see much of them. But but just going to the Ryman alone is a kind of a magical experience, you know. To be, you know, rock and roll doesn't really have a home base like country does, you know. It's almost
for sure.
The core of that genre kind of is all in that building in a way. So it's even if you're not in the country, just being a musician, it's really inspiring to go into that place, you know.
It is. It sounds great. And,
yeah.
And anywhere you go, and anywhere you're standing in that room, it sounds gorgeous, and it's like going to church.
Yeah, really. And you guys have played there a few times, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We sure have. We've played there probably 5 times. I don't know, something like that.
Does it remind you of the Tabernacle in Atlanta at all?
Not really, because Tabernacle, for one, is not as acoustically treated.
Right.
And I can tell you this: I think Nashville is a rowdy and loud and boisterous crowd, but I got to say Atlanta takes the cake for the loudest, most raging room that we play in America. One of the most. Oh yeah. That particular room. Yeah.
Yeah, there is some magic there. When did you guys realize that it was kind of special for you? Was it like the first time you played there, or?
Yes. Yeah. We played there. I don't even remember the year, but yes, I thought that there was just a certain rock room vibe about it. You know, it looks cool. I like the you know, how high the ceilings are. It reminds me of like, you know, like old theater style kind of seating and stuff. You know, it's like a standard looking seating area on the balcony and et cetera, et cetera. But when you fill it up and the people are raging and loud and receptive, it really, it's so loud in there. It's rowdy. It's like a rage cage in there. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, well, I've seen a few shows there, and I know. Yeah, it's magic. really is.
I think we played with the Spin Doctors the first time we played there, and they opened up for us.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was cool to meet them, you know, just for nostalgic reasons and stuff, you know. They're
Oh,
nice
yeah.
people,
I
nice
mean,
band. And
yeah, I always kind of like them. I know they kind of get, you know, some people, it's a love or hate thing, but I always liked them. And I always thought it was really cool that the guy always used a piccolo snare, you know, gave
oh,
him
yeah,
a really unique sound, you know, and I always kind of liked his style. It's like, that's, you
Hell
know,
yeah. I did too.
I got into a bit of funk thanks to them as well. I mean, I was already into some, but I think it just furthered it along. Definitely. So,
Sure.
so what's up in Umphrey's land? I know you mentioned you were talking about maybe some virtual shows or something.
Yes, we're working on that. We're in the process today that we're going to be doing some streams in the Labor Day weekend coming up out of our headquarters, our warehouse where we store, you know. I think it's basically going to be 2 or 3 streams, and it's going to be during that Labor Day weekend, and we may do something down the road again, but that's kind of all we can do at this moment.
Right.
So we're just doing our best, you know. That's it, really.
So you just get to set up and kind of put on a regular concert and stream it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well,
and it won't be the exact production that we would do, like stage plot wise, but it'll be like a concept with you know, a higher end production for sure.
Okay, so there'll still be some of the great lights you all are known for and all that with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ben will be there running the situation.
Yeah, man, and Ben will be running the situation.
Okay, and Kris, this is Dustin. In case you didn't get the intro there, he's a
What's up, man?
Bass player friend of mine from about 20 years back, and one of the biggest Umphrey fans I know. And
wow.
He had a
Thank you.
list of really cool questions to run by you here in a bit. So I was like, come on by and join us. You know? So, yeah. So how are you spending your days lately during this unusual
for
time?
Sure. What was that? The last thing you just said?
I said, how you been spending your days lately? You know, during this unusual time.
Sitting on the couch a lot, watching Netflix.
I've had my share of that.
What's up?
Burnt through it all at this point.
Yeah, almost. I'm running out of shows to watch. I'm watching The Umbrella Academy right now, which seems to be pretty interesting. I didn't think it's kind of a show. I at first I was like, this might be a reach for me, but now I really like it. I'm like almost, you know, addicted to it. But yeah, basically I've been just working out by going. It's actually mainly just going out, hiking a lot, trying to be outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do a lot of home projects, replace my bathroom countertops. You know, just like work on certain areas of the house, renovating another room to make it a guest room / studio, home studio room. Not home studio, but like kind of like a room to record in addition to what I already have.
Okay. And do you have your kit set up at the house or a kit?
Yeah. In fact, I could take you down there if you want.
Yeah, well, let's have a peek. Sure.
Yeah. Walk with me. It's my tour. Casa de Myers. So it's been a long time since I've seen you, Sean.
It has been a while. You know, we were hanging out at Nearfest when you played with Keneally. And I guess that's the first time I met you. And then we hung out a few times at some different shows. I remember when you played for the Georgia Theater in Athens, and we hung out on the bus and talked about Prague with you and Jake, and that was good. Then I left my phone there, and you had to mail it back to me. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, man, that was me.
Yeah, so this is, for one, this is the actual recording room part of my, I don't know if I can do the reverse camera angle on this, but this is my my home listening room rig.
Wow. Okay.
It's like with the full clouds with LEDs and everything. And
I like the art.
some gnarly artwork.
I like it.
Yeah, thanks. I personally think there's a demon possessed into this painting.
I can see it.
I wouldn't doubt it.
I can see the horns.
And then here's another artsy piece.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just trying to make it aesthetically pleasing in this room, and not seem like you're in a basement. Like and it looks all disheveled and dark and all that.
Right.
And this is my playing room. This is the actual tracking room.
Okay. And which kit do you have over there?
This is my home kit. It's a Pearl Reference series drum set. Sorry if I'm trying to get my camera angles right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I got a sub kick mic on it, and it's all mic'd up to Telefunken mics. And yeah, I'm basically trying to track. Oh, and I'm currently working on a new electronic drum rig right here.
Okay.
Check these out. Here, I'll get behind. Behind. Yeah. What if I go this way? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's actually better, I think.
The video flips.
It does, yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
So these are new pads. I'm getting they're Dawes pads, actually. Dawes is a company that has been around for a while. These are really heavy duty pads and actually withstand any drummer's velocity or strength, or how hard they strike. Neil Peart used to use these, and Nine Inch Nails used to use them. Yeah, and then I have Evans heads 10, 12, 14, 16. I just happen to have two 14s right now, two snares here, and I use the hybrid exotic for my main snare. And then oh, look at this! I have an array of snare drums.
Awesome.
A whole stack of
Look
snares.
at all those snares. It's too many snares.
That's right. Something for every mood.
Yeah.
Right?
Many colors to work with.
Yeah. So.
Is there a piccolo down there for your inner spin doctor?
Yeah, man.
Oh,
As
good.
a matter of fact, here's one here that I have on already on the kit, and this is an interesting company, Longo. They make very good drums, handcrafted. And then I just have this Pearl brass free floater.
Okay.
So yeah.
Very nice.
This actually I got this from a collector, and then I guess apparently this used to be Matt Chamberlain's drum set, a snare drum.
Oh wow.
Nice.
Yeah, so now I have it.
Awesome. And what kind of electric sounds are you triggering?
Oh, okay. So I'm triggering custom samples at the moment, but I'm working on looking for new libraries of samples to use for my next tour. And I run it through this thing, which is made by Pearl, called the Mimic Pro. This is their newest module that's come out, and man, it is very powerful. It's actually better than the V-Drum highest level module, or any other module that I've come across. They've got features that I can't believe, and then they have it in 32-bit, for each sample, whereas a lot of them were at 16. So that's cool. Yeah, I got my rig set up here. It's
beautiful.
It's time, It's just, it's like it's all I can really. It's been my saving grace during this whole pandemic.
Yeah.
So
are you doing any kind of studio work on the side? I know you were doing some stuff with Cornelia Ken, right? You're going to be on his most recent one. Was that stuff you did years ago, or is that more recent stuff you did?
Yeah, actually, we're basically looking to do some. Well, I don't know if I should really say too much yet because we haven't really made any announcements yet. But when I was in LA, let me see if I can put this here. See all right. Just want to sit down and relax with you guys.
I hear you.
So yeah, basically Mike and I have been playing in different
ensembles and stuff together, and we're basically trying to work on songs at the moment, and then we'll see where it takes us. But there's a chance that we might come out with a project.
Okay, that's good. Well, he had hinted at it. I had him on a couple months ago. He was on one of my first episodes, and
yeah,
it was good to hear you guys working together.
It is. It's incredible. I mean, I was a fan, since college, and 98 or so, 97, 98 was the first time I heard him, and I was listening to him ever since. And just to be playing with him is kind of it's like a dream. It's incredibly surreal. And then to come to find it, he's just as humble as any friend you would have, as well as, or musician or co-working player that you would play with. It's really, it gives you hope, for the music industry or whatnot, because sometimes you don't always click well with other people, or it feels a little dysfunctional in a band situation. But with him, everything's cool, man. Everything.
Yeah.
So
and I just want to remind my viewers, we're talking about Mike Keneally, who was a famous sideman. He's played with the likes of Frank Zappa and Steve Vai, and most recently Joe Satriani. But the coolest stuff he does is his own music. I'm been a big fan since the early 90s. And, I love seeing Mike, playing with all these greats. But at the end of the day, I'm more excited to hear him play his own stuff. So it's always cool to hear that there's new stuff in the works. And I know he said he's basically working on a new album. So
yeah, he is. He's been working on that and other projects. It's funny. I haven't read the Keneally in about a couple weeks, so I don't really know what I'm supposed to say that he's doing. But I know of a few things. And I found it really interesting when he introduced me to Devin Townsend. I was not familiar with Devin's music, and then holy smokes, incredible.
Yeah.
So
Devin Townsend's quite amazing.
I remember him, back from reading my guitar magazines in the early 90s when he made that album with Steve Vai. And, he's, come a long way since then. He's definitely a visionary in his own right. So, what I've heard from his Empath album, the most recent one, was just like,
totally. That was the one I heard.
So just so much, you just don't know what's going to happen next. And it's the beauty of it. It kind of reminded me of something like Mr. Bungle, but not, but that kind of unpredictable, where we could go to any genre, any second kind of unpredictability.
Yeah.
And will.
Yeah. And will.
It's like just an interesting journey through the musical maze. So tell us a little bit about some of your early musical memories. What was like some bands or stuff you might have heard around the house as a kid that you really loved before you could even go buy a record of your own?
Well, I found that. Well, first of all, I'm finding that this light is really bright above me, so I'm gonna go dim that real quick.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. And I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and I basically was, playing sports, doing a lot of, sporty things growing up when I was around age 8. I got a drum set given to me by my uncle Bill, and it was a Blue Sparkle Ludwig from the 60s era. I can't remember the exact number of year, but I just self-taught myself by listening to the radio and the songs and visually watching drummers play. And then by age 11, there was a store that basically started up when I was 11 in Palatine, Illinois, called the Drum Pad. And it was a famous drum store from all around town, all around Chicago, and it became that. But it started as a very small shop, and it was the people there were great teachers and great salesperson. They people, they knew how to sell, and they knew what they were selling. But Jim Strike was the owner, and he started giving me lessons, and then I just started listening to music and expanding my taste through him, and then through friends in the neighborhood. And then, I was eventually good enough to be able to play in a band setting that next year by age 12. And I started getting, exposed to hard rock music at that time in the late 80s. It was like, Guns N' Roses, and like I was playing we were listening to hard like Van Halen, Ozzy Osbourne, Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Iron Maiden, Metallica, all the classics. And we were just playing locally, and we were a rock trio called Iron Triangle.
Nice. For a trio, that's perfect.
Yeah. Back in the day, that seemed to be, the cool thing to do. Iron something.
For sure.
And then, we were all 12 and 13, so I was singing backgrounds and didn't even hit puberty yet. So
very high.
That was interesting. And so then, anyway, we played local Battle of the Bands, and I would just kind of get, accustomed to a drum community, or not a drum community, a music community at a young age there. And there was a lot of great musicians out of Palatine, and, I went to high school with a lot of players. And I started expanding from hard rock and metal to grunge once Nirvana hit, changed everything.
Sure.
And so I was more focused on that and more punk rock and more ska music, which was big at that time, like ska core, So I was doing that a lot. I was actually playing in a ska band called the Scalawags, and that was a very good band.
Not the Scalawags.
Scalawags.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, whichever you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were really good, and we had actually some offers to work with an agent that was going to book us a tour in Japan or something. But it was either college or that tour, and we all chose to go to college. So I think we made the right move.
Yeah, I think so. That was probably a better choice of the two.
Yeah.
Get more mileage out of the college bit,
I'd say so.
And so, who were some of your earliest inspirations on the kit? Some of your favorite drummers?
Well, for sure. I think Stuart Copeland's resonated with me my entire life since even learning how to speak. First thing I think I learned how to say was "Don't stand so close to me." 'Cause
Right.
that was a song that was being played on the record, like around the house when I was like 1 or 2 years old, and Led Zeppelin, big, probably Bonham. So John Bonham was just as important to me. So those two guys, Copeland, John Bonham, which are, very different sounds, but just as impactful. And then, I got introduced to, let's see. I mean, Metallica was in there somewhere. So when the earlier Metallica records, and Justice for All, when that came out, to me, that was some of the most technically advanced Lars Ulrich drumming of his whole career.
Yeah, that's kind of hit his peak, I think.
I agree. And so I liked him at his peak. I liked Living Color when that came out.
Oh yeah.
Living Color was a huge impact on me. So Will Calhoun. And then towards high school, all the grunge drummers. I mean, every single one of them. Jimmy Chamberlain and Matt Cameron, Matt Chamberlain.
How would you rank those guys? Who's your top 5 grunge drummers?
I would say, Danny Carey's in there, but although I thought Tool may have started as a grunge band, but they kind of got also categorized in other genres, but I would still put him in there. I would say definitely Matt Cameron and Jimmy Chamberlain are my 2 favorite grunge drummers. And then underneath that would be Dave Grohl, because Dave wasn't about technique as it was more about absolutely how solid he was on his drum parts. And he still plays that way to this day. And even when I hear they watch him do drum takes live, he absolutely nails it. Just knows exactly what he's going to play and how he's going to do it. And I think he almost even that energy rubs off on Taylor Hawkins when he plays with Foo Fighters. I mean, it's just really powerful. But yeah, I don't really know. Oh, well, I guess I don't know where you would put Primus in there somewhere, but I loved Herb, Tim Alexander.
Sure.
Yeah.
And what
And
about
so, yeah. I mean, I'm probably leaving people out.
well,
But yeah, those are the general. I'd say
Dale
Matt.
Crover.
yeah.
What's that?
Dale Crover of the Melvins.
Oh, the Melvins. Yeah, that's interesting.
The king of playing at 45 BPM.
Yeah, exactly.
In time.
That's right. How about Sean from Alice in Chains? You like his style any?
Yeah, I always just listened to it without really singling him out so much because the sound was it was just so connected. I thought they were such an authentic band.
Yeah.
They were truly, like, to me, the first wave of grunge where it was kind of transitioning from hard rock to grunge. They were kind of like right in the middle there.
Yeah.
They still had some elements of both. And so, yeah, I liked him as a drummer.
You know, I was talking on the show recently about just how that whole change came from the late 80s when metal kind of segued into grunge, and how there were certain bands that kind of popped up a few years before grunge came along that kind of pointed the direction, like this is where we're going in the 90s. And I would say Jane's Addiction was one of the first ones, you know.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
And even somebody like King's X a few years back, you know, that whole drop D kind of grungy sound, they had that going on before it was a thing, really.
Totally.
So.
Yeah, that's true. King's X is another one. Yeah, and yeah, Jane's, of course. Yeah, you know, Stephen Perkins was great. He's kind of like a more surf rock kind of category for me, like in terms of really applying a lot of drums, like toms, into his grooves, and you know, big sample with the Wendell Jr. Sound, like what they call it, which is like the effect they use on the snare, and you know. It's his it's like his sound. It's so original. Yeah.
Yeah, they were definitely ahead of their time, you know. And I think that stuff has aged really well too. Okay.
But I gotta say that Jimmy Chamberlin, you know, hometown Chicagoan like myself, is probably my favorite. I think he really was like the modern day Ginger Baker, or like a Mitch Mitchell sort of a flair in there, an approach, because it's like a jazzier concept of playing drums, playing rock. And I always love that in rock and roll. Like, it's just so hip, you know?
Oh yeah. And I think, go ahead.
He could do everything that you hear with Jane's Addiction that was totally applicable on the radio, but then you go and listen to Banyan and all the stuff that he did with that jazz fusion side project, and it just goes in a completely different direction that you would never expect the guy that plays in Ben Caught Stealing to be a drummer for.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Banyan just absolutely blows my mind, and it blew my mind even more to know that it was the brainchild of the drummer from Jane's Addiction.
Yeah. The cast has changed a little. It's rotated a bit in Banyan. I actually played in some lineups that were formulated somewhat of that lineup, and it's always very eclectic.
Yeah, it was always changing. I mean, Mike Watt was the bass player for a while. You know, that's wild enough. And I know that Jim over in Boondocks has been working with the sax player that's been playing with Banyan as of late.
Oh yeah, I don't know who is the sax player.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember the name of the sax player, but he's one of the current guys that's working with Steven and Banyan at the moment.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I didn't even know they were still playing.
They're set to play the summer camp when.
No kidding.
When it finally happens, yeah, Banyan's gonna be there, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right.
Jeez.
And yeah, I think Dustin's group was going to be there too. Remember FUX? Is that right?
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, Dustin's the bass player.
Fuchs and
Sultan. Fuchs.
Bass
okay.
player. We have actually played a couple after shows for you guys. Georgia Theater Rooftop.
Yeah, I remember that.
Played with us. Yeah. Wilmington, I think.
Nice.
DC. We played the after show in DC.
Yeah, man, that's cool. I remember that. What a small world.
Yeah, it all randomly comes together. Musicians know musicians.
Yeah.
A question that's come up recently, I've asked a number of people, is what distinguishes a great venue to you from a mediocre one? What do you look for when you arrive that kind of, not just even about the acoustics, but just in the way that they run it or the building itself?
I think, well, for one, the sound, you know, and the atmosphere. Of course, the atmosphere for anybody, but the sound. I always love just going to a venue where I can hear at an intimate level, like these players playing the way they like to play. I also don't mind going to a place where it doesn't sound great, but I guess it kind of goes hand in hand between sound and atmosphere. For one, you can go and play, like basically in Philly, you can play. What is it? I'm so sorry. During this pandemic time, my brain has not been working at all.
You're not alone. You're not alone.
But my favorite place, actually, one of my favorite venues is the Fox Theater in Oakland, California, and that to me is like a perfect antithesis of having a great balance of great sound and great atmosphere. It's like an old theater that's been rehabbed, and it's an incredibly beautiful, ornate place. And it sounds really good in there, no matter where you are. So I love those concerts where you can almost a sit-down concert where people can hear everything like so well, and even you can hear everything on stage so well. But then you have Red Rocks where you can just play outside, and the atmosphere and the feeling is so majestic. It's nothing you can't really explain it, you know. I think the main thing is to have an open mind towards, instead of not preferring this or not preferring that. If you have punk rock roots like I do, you're used to going to some really, shitty rooms,
Sure.
rooms that are banged up and sound horrible. It's like you may as well be in somebody's basement or in a garage.
Like a black hole covered with stickers. You know the room. You know the type, right?
Yeah, like a furnace room with stickers.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way CBGB's was, and we actually got to play there before it closed, and I loved that experience. I was blown away by it, but when you go there, it's like it was a beaten up old place, man. It was incredibly beaten up. Like the floor was like all beat in from all the boots that were in there, and all the people over the decades just moshing and doing whatever. But anyway, so I would say, just to give you an example, the Fox Theater is probably my favorite in the country right now, like in terms of theaters. But all the Fillmores are nice. I'm not the greatest fan of the House of Blues, but I like some of the rooms.
I think those probably vary a lot from town to town.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tabernacle started as a House of Blues during the '96 Olympics.
Oh, really?
It was one for about 5 years after that. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, the House of Blues here in Atlanta is maybe a 400-person club-size venue.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
A couple bands have done some after-show runs for y'all's New Year's Eve gigs there. The bassist, the band Funk You?
Sure, of course I do.
Yeah, their bassist, a good buddy of mine, actually, in a band before he played in Funk You, played a couple after shows at the Hard Rock here in Atlanta, as it's only about maybe 2-3 blocks from Tabernacle, but it is not up to par with the Hard Rocks of yesteryear, or even the Tabernacle.
Yeah,
Wow.
I bet.
I didn't even know we still had one.
Yeah, we still got a Hard Rock.
I'll be
I've
darned.
been in there
Okay.
a couple times.
That's cool.
Not bad,
Wow.
but it's small.
Yeah. Kind of makes
And it's directly connected to the restaurant too. So you go in the green room, and it directly goes into the kitchen of the main Hard Rock. So a lot of your regular green room activities, they're not
as green as usual.
No.
What are some of your favorite festivals that you guys have played at?
I would say
you know, a long time ago, I really enjoyed the Fuji Rock Fest. That totally blew my mind in Japan.
Oh, I can imagine.
That was my favorite. And then, oh gosh, I haven't thought about it in a while, but like, you know, I think Bonnaroo has been fun over the years. I think that it's much bigger now, and the acts are less of our kind there now. But I still, Lollapalooza I enjoyed for a while as well. Man, I don't know. There's just so many. I'd say the Electric Forest is probably my favorite. One of my favorites. That's that's more of a electronic and or jam band-esque cultured event. And the event, and a lot of the artwork and all the hospitality and preparations, like the artistic side of it, is all curated by the Burning Man culture.
Okay.
And it's really incredible what they do with art, and in the forest they light it up, and it's really nice, man. It's really interesting, very artistic environment. The air is it's Michigan summer, so it's gorgeous, like just beautiful woods, and the air is pure and fresh, and you know, it's really nice place to play. A lot of young, cute girls in furry boots, and yeah, I mean, that's probably my favorite. There's probably a bunch more, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say I'm trying to think, you know, like, because there's so many festivals we play, and some have been so great, you know, for different reasons. Sometimes it's nicer to go to mom and pop festivals still to this day, because, you know, I feel like there's a difference in hospitality and how it's treated. People, you know, are more one-on-one, like really respectful and really accommodating to you. And the fans love the more, you know, intimate kind of closeness in a mom and pop fest. But they're so few and far between, because, you know, Live Nation or you know, EG Entertainment or whoever else out there just buys you know, the festival out, and then they just end up having a lot of corporate sponsors, and it becomes this huge event with so much, you know, corporate sponsorship, and then it changes the vibe, and there's way more people, and it's I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but just sometimes that makes the difference between the authentic local festival and then, you know, the chain. It's like a chain of restaurants kind of thing, you know.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly.
What was it like getting to meet Tom Morello at Halloween last year? Saw that picture.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was incredible because it turns out that he and I have lots of mutual friends that when we were growing up in the suburbs, and he's from Libertyville, and I'm from Palatine. That's not too far from each other, and we had a lot of mutual friends. I went to high school with Tim McElrath, who's the singer for Rise Against. And
wow, no shit.
Yeah. And we were playing in a lot of punk bands at the time. Tom was a lot older, of course, but we knew of Tom and people that were kind of the same culture of players. And we kind of discovered that later.
Louis at that time, right? In the earlier, before Rise Against?
Yeah.
Is that not correct?
But before Rise Against, Tim and I used to play, you know, like we wouldn't play a lot, but we would just find ourselves just in like some crazy jam session in a basement somewhere. And there were other players too, from, you know, different types of bands. But yeah, anyway, Tom from the suburbs like me, and we struck it off real well. And actually he's been really awesome about contributing to this charity that I take care of, that I'm a part of. So hold on, sorry. Okay, and so basically, yeah, it's called the Miraculous Love Kids. It's a charity that helps kids in impoverished nations and providing them food and shelter, money, and also guitars, of which they learn to play. From Lanny Cordola, the founder of the event. He'll go all the way over to like Kabul, like Afghanistan, and teach these young girls how to play, you know, American rock songs, Beatles, British and American rock songs. And
it's really, really, really moving. And Tom has recently contributed to, just contributed to a lot of that with me. So I'm really happy about that. And he is a true philanthropist. So I'm very inspired by Tom for that alone. He's a very intelligent guy. So
yeah,
I think he rocks. I think he's awesome, and he's become a good friend.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
that's really cool.
So I had a question come in. One of our viewers named Heather had a question. She says, I'm interested in Kris's jazz background and how it sets him apart from other rock drummers that don't have it.
That's cool.
Uh,
Well, hopefully you'll be seeing more of that, but I have clips on YouTube if she ever wants to see them. And I have a website, chrismyersdrums.com. I haven't really done much announcing or launching of it. But yeah, I just grew, I mean, I do have a master's in jazz studies performance from DePaul University. And I have an undergrad education, Bachelor of Arts Music degree in jazz as well. And jazz became, I was getting to that point before earlier with my development of music. And I was going from grunge to punk rock to, electronic music, which I forgot to throw in there. I was way into industrial music at the time as well. And then after that, once I went to college for scholarship in music, it was all about jazz and Frank Zappa.
awesome.
Yeah.
Frank was introduced to me more so in college than any time in my life. I mean, of course I heard who he was and people, exposing me to him at a young age, but I'd say Frank was kind of intertwined with my jazz elements, but the true jazz artists that I listened to were all the classics: Miles, Coltrane, Wayne Shorter, and I'd say Cannonball Adderley and his quartets are, to me, some of the finest small group jazz recordings out there. But I just started listening when I was 18 and just had to learn the craft, and I just learned to love it more than any style of music. And I really recommend it to players in rock. And yes, she's right. It's kind of a unique quality that not too many rock players can really play true jazz, nor do they want to always. I find that that's a big and integral part of my rock influence, by having the element of surprise in jazz as a drummer, where you're going to use your rudimentary ideas and your fills and concepts and not play them exactly the same every time, and think more about the feeling of the rolling and rhythm concept of the drum set in moments, and be spontaneous. And to me, that is what I love about jazz, and applying those elements to rock. Mitch Mitchell's a good example of that. Just listen to anything that Mitch Mitchell does with Jimi Hendrix, and there you have it.
I'd say even Stewart has some jazz elements as well. His light touch and unpredictability kind of reminds me of a jazz approach many times.
I agree. I was getting another person I was going to say, because he's dynamic and he's spontaneous with where he puts his accents in certain elements of the drums, like even the ride cymbal, the bell. The way he plays a bell, I've never heard before, like any other rock drummer play it that way, right? So it's consistently inconsistent, but it's not getting in the way, and it's not rough around the edges or rigid. It's it's right in there. It's beautiful, and it's it develops from soft to loud, and he's playing it in a certain way, ding, 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 as opposed to just a constant ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, exactly.
Like quarter note pattern.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you have a chance to see their reunion tour back about 10 years ago?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I
How did you feel like his
Field.
style had evolved over the years?
Oh, really? Yeah.
I'm just curious if you noticed much of a difference between, how the records sounded. Because it seems like they had a different kind of approach, kind of a more mature approach, almost like Sting's solo career was blended into the vibe of the Police at that point,
Yes.
I was just wondering if you noticed a difference in Stewart's playing around that time.
I think that he still sounded fantastic. So he sounded great. He still had the energy. I think he was, I think the main thing that I gathered from that, what you said, is I'd have to say he was mature because he wasn't speeding up like he used to when he was younger.
Right.
I thought his tempos were way more solid.
Right.
And he wasn't as boisterous. But he was laying it down, and it was also, sometimes it was there when he would go for it. And yeah, man, I was very grateful to get to capture that energy when I did, because, that was just a moment in history for me, and I always wanted to see him live. So yeah, I thought he was outstanding.
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, nobody ever expected them to get back together, so that was great. I'm glad they did it before, waiting too long. You know how some reunions
Absolutely.
are.
Yeah.
You see a few reunions, it's like, this would have been great 20 years ago. But, so none of that with the Police, they timed it well. So
a lot of those bands, the older ones, they always, like, you actually see the Police play, and if you're hearing them, and you're actually hearing what they're playing, and there are no extra musicians behind the curtain, whereas in some older acts, some of these old guys have to have like extra players, extra guitarists in the back or under the stage,
Right.
And that's when you're hearing them, instead. It's not an uncommon thing.
Oh yeah, and sometimes they're just adding an extra drummer,
Yeah,
kind of happened too, where the older guy's just kind of getting out of gas, so they add a younger guy to kind of light a fire under it all. And I don't know. I mean, getting old's never easy, but the lucky people.
I got to say though, on that, to compliment to compliment what you're saying, and maybe not. I got to be quite honest. I saw Yes here recently at Grand Ole Opry.
Oh yeah.
With whoever the young drummer was playing.
Jay Shellen, that's his name. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought maybe it would be a guy who would be a little more aggressive. That doesn't mean he was bad.
Right.
That doesn't mean good or bad. Just a more aggressive, more vigorous, like a Gary Husband sort of. Not Gary Husband, but more of a mixture of the old Alan White. And then Alan came up, and he did actually play, and I don't know if how is he doing? He didn't look well when I saw him.
Well, he had some back surgery, that really kind of sidelined him for a number of years, because it just, spine surgery takes a long time to heal from.
I see.
And so I think they got the other guy in there. For one tour, they had Steve Howe's son Dylan on drums. I don't know if that's the one you saw or not.
He had dark hair, and he looked like he could have been in like the Byrds or something.
Was he stage left or stage right?
Or the Kinks, that's right. Yeah.
Was he stage left or right?
He was. I think he was leaning towards more stage. He was center, front, like back center.
Right in the middle, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, that was probably Jay Shellen, because Dylan Howe was there for a minute, but yeah, he's definitely a jazz player. Bill Bruford gave him his first lesson, and he's kind of gone from there. And
I just kind of wish it was a little more. I used to hear majestic, yes, and that's exactly how you have to play that music. I don't know if it's a preference for the other players like Steve or somebody to tell the drummer not to play as loud, but I wish that he played a little more vigorous, for the show. I almost was a little sleepy towards the end.
Yeah, I hear you, and I know what you mean.
I hate to say it, but
I've kind of seen it, just being a fan and going to every tour for the past 20 years. It's like, I think Alan was kind of in his prime in the early 90s, and,
right.
After that, it's just kind of let off the gas a little bit each year, for various reasons, probably physical ones. But he's given us years of amazing playing, so,
I agree
for that.
I just wish I saw him then.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, anymore, I just kind of go to watch Steve play. It's almost like
that was beautiful.
It's still Yes, but it's kind of Steve Howe's Yes in a way.
Right.
So, being a guitar player, of course, I'm all for that. But seeing them back in the early 2000s when they had the classic lineup that did,
Gotcha.
Tales from Tropic Africa Oceans and all that with Rick Wakeman, that was peak Yes shows for me. I'm not quite old enough to have seen them in the 70s, so I was kind of waiting all through the 80s for them to get back to that progressive stuff,
Right.
So it's like, and the 80s stuff was really cool too in its own kind of 80s supercharged way, but is also a little dumbed down also, you know, so it was nice to see them
Gotcha.
get back to those big 20-minute epics and all that and really nail them. So
Totally.
yeah, but still love them in any way.
No, me too. Me
Yeah,
too. I just wish
yeah.
that I got to see him earlier. I was a dummy to wait this long to see them, and of course John Anderson is no longer part of it. And then, but the bass player was really good. I thought he really played the part well. Really
that
well.
was Billy Sherwood. Yeah, we
Yeah,
had him
Billy
on
Sherwood.
here. He was a guest back on 4th of July, and we had a really cool talk about, you know, what it was like to wind up in that position, because he'd kind of known Chris Squire since the early 90s and kind of, you know, did some side projects with him. So when the time came to hand over the reins, he's like, you're my choice.
Yeah.
You know? And
The Apprentice.
you know, I thought he did a great job. You know, he's a really nice guy too. So he's kind of, you know, Yes's whipping boy, because he kind of came onto the scene in the 90s, and a lot of people were like,
Oh, yeah.
well, what are you here for? Because for a while he played guitar, you know, for a couple tours as a sixth member. And I think some people just had an issue with Yes having a sixth member. You know, it just seemed weird and kind of unnecessary. But, you know, now they're back to a 5-piece, and he's, you know, playing bass, and that I really think of him more as a bass player than a guitar player anyway. So
Sure.
he's had an interesting relationship with the band, but he's been kind of on the periphery since the early 90s. So he's kind of a shoe-in for that particular gig once Chris was ill. So, you know, and he thought he was just filling in. He thought Chris would, you know, get his health back and take his job again, but it wasn't to be. So, yeah,
he was the fish out of water.
Exactly. Yeah. So, what do you think about the term jam band? You know, it's got a lot of connotations, and I'm just curious how it strikes you, because I just think, you know, like I said, it doesn't really cover you guys. It covers a portion of what you do, but you guys are more like a progressive band to me. You know, I mean, you play all genres and juggle them over the course of a night. And what makes you guys so fun to watch, because, you know, I mean, nothing against some jam bands, but there's some that are very one-dimensional. And then there's other ones like you guys that are just like this multifaceted feast, you know, where you never know what's going to come at you next. And I was just kind of curious how you feel about the term, and if you feel like it describes you guys, or it sells you short, or offensive, or what.
I appreciate that. No, it's quite all right, man. And honestly, I think we are part of, I mean, I came up on the scene when the guys are already established in the jam band culture. To me, in the early 2000s, jam band didn't mean just the sound qualifications for that and who you identify with musically, as much as it was the culture of the fan base and all of the tapers and the recording tech, you know, the people that you see at the festival environment. And how interconnected they were. They were quite brilliant. You know, it's one of the most extraordinary and most hardcore subcultures that exist, and always has. And I mean, you can't beat it in terms of the loyalty and the hardcores that go there, and the masses. You know, and I think whether you like the reasons for them going or not, you have to kind of over time really understand it and appreciate it. It took me a while. I just went in as an intellectual kind of post-grad studio musician, you know, playing any gig that, you know, and like, you know, at home in Chicago doing, you know, wearing a tux and doing jobbing stuff, but then like going out and playing with an actual band. It took me a while to understand the culture, and because I just thought of it was either Fish or the Dead, you know. Sure. And then I was told of all these other bands, you know, from Mo to String Cheese Incident to, you know, some of the more electronic based ones, Soundtrack Sector 9, you know, or Jamtronica, like Disco Biscuits, or, you know, some of the older cats, Government Mule, Southern Rock, Allman Brothers. And you know, these were bands I was just learning about literally the first year I joined. And then by the time I got to my present moment here, I've found that I've become friends with these people. They have all been supportive of each other, and we've built something that's been quite amazing to be a part of, just as a communal aspect. So musically, I don't like being labeled. I don't think anyone likes being pigeonholed.
No.
Most artists don't. So for that alone, I think the name itself limits us to certain opportunities. For example, the Recording Academy, for some reason, seems to turn a high nose towards anybody who's a jam band, which I think is unfair, because I find that there are some bands in the jam band world who have made great recordings, great song produced releases or albums, and never get credit for it. I think it's like high school. It's cliquey, the whole Grammy thing, you know.
Sure.
And I only mean that because I'm frustrated, because I feel like Umphrey's has been well deserved of a Grammy at this point. That's maybe one of the downsides, or that maybe sometimes interviewers or like big publications or that they might label you as that, and they might limit you, or promoters even, of certain festivals. Like, we'll never get asked to Coachella, whatever. It's like, not that I care, but there's some limitations because people falsely categorize you. But that's just the way art and music has been in for centuries. So it's just another,
Yeah. Well,
same thing.
Prog rock is a similar kind of box to be stepped into, but it's, there's many kinds of progressive rock. There's stuff that, the classic stuff like Yes and Genesis. And then there's like 90s kind of bands inspired by that stuff, kind of that sound kind of like 90s versions of it. And but then there's also more avant-garde strains of it, where harmonically and rhythmically it's a little more difficult, for lack of a better
Absolutely
word. And that's almost progressive in the true sense, as we're progressing and making music nobody's ever heard before. So you got that kind of in there under that umbrella, along with this kind of symphonic stuff. It's kind of like prog with a big P or a little one. It's kind of like,
I agree with you. So the jam band culture is similar. It's evolved, for better or worse. What we're not getting enough of these days is like that throwback 90s jam band sound. But there are a couple of new bands on the scene now that have been trying to bring it back that way, and people love it. So, but a lot of it's gone towards more of some elements of like maybe some pop elements, and then also like EDM was a huge part of the mid 2000s for everybody. So like we found we were playing a lot of festivals and jam band world where jam band driven lineup with those EDM acts like Bass Nectar, and it's like, and man, it's incredibly like sonically just huge. The sound is just melting your face off with these like wobbly bass lines. But it just, after about an hour or so, I'm like, damn, dude, I guess you have to be on drugs at this point if you want to enjoy it at this point.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about you guys, is there's so much variety that, it's not going to be all one thing all night. And you can come wasted or sober and you're going to enjoy it on a level that's different than when it's all this kind of one trick pony stuff all night where, let's wait for the guitar player to get up to the 22nd fret and go wheedly, and that's our climax. And, it's a little predictable sometimes. And which leads me to ask about improv, because, jam kind of implies that there'll be some improvisation over the course of a night, or these bands specialize in improv. And you guys do too. I mean, you guys are such an amazing unit that's so dialed in at this point, it might even be hard for people to discern what is improv and what is composed. And that's one of the cool things about you guys. And I'm just curious much, I'm sure every show is a different adventure. And is it like there's a portion of every night that's kind of open to improv where you have certain songs that lend themselves well to it? Or is it more like it could be any song that could get opened up depending on the night?
We do a good job really calculating how much degree of improv we want in the set. we have carefully examined a method from night to night of how to balance it out right, to have songs for whatever purpose, because we know that we have to appease so many fan base perspectives in one set list in one night, and then change it and do it all over again another night, you know. So it's complicated, but yes, we do think about improv. We think about how long for and when and how, meaning, you know, sometimes we do what we call as a Jimmy Stewart, which is basically an arranged improvisational progression or idea that we build and improvise over. Reason we do these structural improv is because sometimes, quite frankly, you find that if you just let it all loose and play and all open all the time for your improv moments, it's hit or miss, no matter who you are or how good you are. And that could make or break a vibe in the room for, you know, in a momentum. So
well, I think like the Dead are a good example of that. I'd say they only got the landing gear up about half the time when they were trying to take flight. And you know,
I agree with you. And we're a high energy band. Energy is a big part of what we want to do. So we can't lose that energy and let it get loose and wobbly and fall apart, you know, if we're doing this open calliope of sounds, and not, because some nights we're not all on the same page anyway. So we have to have something to meet in the middle with. And so we think about improv, but we do them structurally somewhat. And that doesn't mean by any means that we arrange the full improv. We're just arranging a chord progression or one melody or a riff and maybe a B section or a C section at most, and then come back. We do not prearrange the entire thing. And there have been some people who've commented on message boards and accused us of that, and they're wrong. That's not what we do. We do very partial, semi-arranged improvs, like the Jimmy Stewarts that we call them. Yeah.
And do you still feel like some nights they really go in unique directions you're not expecting, and other nights maybe not so much?
Oh, I'm sorry. You mean in terms of expectations of the?
Well, yeah.
improv?
I mean, sometimes improvs just kind of go someplace that you didn't expect and take you to the next level. And I guess that's the hope of all of them. But I would say, you know, that's kind of like catching lightning in a bottle to some extent. Where
it actually kind of is, yes. Hit or miss again, once again. But I think we do a pretty good job for the most part, because when you've done it long enough, you kind of like get into not autopilot, but like into a certain mode of doing it and feeling it and into a groove. I used to go and listen to our improvs only for a while to just really analyze everyone's roles and like consistencies and how they play. And knowing that each other's role is always good to know when we go into the improv. That's always the greatest, like jazz ensembles, you know, were I think determined because of that aspect alone. Like, you know, if you listen to some of the Miles bands, they have a certain MO or a certain ethos that they have when they play. And it's not really spoken about, you know, maybe a little bit, who knows, but for us, we used to like listen after, when we were in the van and trailer days, we were in our van and trailer pulling out of the, you know, parking lot and driving to the next city. We would listen to the whole show that night together.
Oh yeah.
And then we would like talk about it. We did that for years. And nowadays, you know, we're just kind of at a point where we just listen to it when we can.
Sure. My friend Mike has a question. He said he'd like to know about how you communicate with the other band members on stage to create this magic so seamlessly. Are there any cues or like a special microphone where only you hear it in the in-ear monitors and it's like, hey, G minor next?
Yes. Yeah. It's a little of both. We used to have before we were doing in-ears, we were doing hand signals a la Frank Zappa style.
Sure. And
we created our own language, you know, like our own movements. Jake would, for example, who's the lead player, take one step forward. That would mean for the guys on the turnaround of the improv to go up a full step. he'll step back when we go one step down. If he does this to me, or Brendan or Jake does this to me, or if they do this with their foot like really fast, that means speed up. If they do this, that means slow down. If they're doing their own there's something called the number system for like players who improvise together, who indicate the sharps and flats by doing 3 up, 3 down.
All right. Yeah.
And all the flats and sharps.
Kind of change your key.
Indicate your key. We don't do the exact number system. We do a system, but it's the Umphrey's number system where they'll just like, this is a C,
Right.
Or like when it's a D, like they point down at their D, this is a D. We're going to D. Yeah. And so it's like that.
Okay. Yeah.
But we also speak now in the talkbacks, and to be honest, I have to do a lot of that sometimes while I'm playing, and it's I admit I'm not always good to do cues while I got 4 limbs going on.
Sure.
But I guess we're the quarterback, so we have to do that at some points.
Yeah. Okay. So we mentioned Zappa earlier. Who's your top 3 Zappa drummers? Your favorite?
Oh, gee, who do you think?
I would say Vinny,
I bet you
Terry,
could answer
and
that for me.
Vinny, Terry, and Chester in that order.
Close.
Okay.
I would say Vinny, Terry, and Chad.
Chad, yeah, okay.
But only because I'm a new guy. I'm a youngin compared to the old school guys who probably had, Chester and Ainsley Dunbar even before that.
Sure, yeah. And
Ainsley was cool actually. When I listen to old stuff, he was a boss hog drummer of the 70s. He was cool.
He was great. It's interesting how he wound up with Journey later, and Steve Smith as well. They're both like motherfuckers that just kind of dialed it in and picked up the paycheck. For a number of years.
Totally.
And, there's nothing wrong with that. It's nice
Nothing
to have
wrong with
a
that.
steady gig that pays great. Well, I just got news that Chester's going to be on my show on the 29th of September. So,
congrats, man.
Check back. Remember he played with Frank Zappa, Weather Report, and then he played next to Phil Collins for 30 years at every live Genesis show. So that's going to be great.
I love Chester. That good for you, man. That's great. Chester's very cool too, and I understand he was on faculty here in Nashville for a while. If he still isn't already.
Yeah, he's in the middle of some home improvements right now, but he said he ought to be free by then. So,
excellent.
Mark your calendars. I'm real excited about that.
You should.
Yeah,
I'll tune in.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, please do, Kris. Okay, so I had a few more questions for you, and
sure.
This has got some too. I was wondering if maybe we could take a quick look at the Umphrey's discography and just kind of free associate about each album and maybe some songs that you love to play live that you think are really satisfying. And I thought maybe we'd start with the most recent ones and work our way backwards.
Okay.
So Dustin has them, so as soon as he gets back here, we'll have him kind of hold them up as we go through the catalog. Am I right that the most recent two, it's Not Us, It's You? That's kind of like a 2-part one that came out about 6 months apart.
Yes.
But they're intended to be kind of a set. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, because the name alone makes it sound like, you put them together and you get the whole title.
Yeah. No, that's right. We're basically playing. We played and recorded all those songs together at once, and then we found that we had to make 2 releases out of them.
Yeah. Now, do you feel like it's all just one album that was split in half, or do you feel like each release has its own kind of vibe and direction?
I'd say they were coincidentally a set of songs that worked as 2 different concepts. Yeah. But then again, maybe not. I mean, nowadays, how do you define an album anymore anyway?
Right.
Sadly,
right.
From the old days, you and I remember albums were awesome to pick up. You just go and pick them up and you appreciate the flow from first song to last song. Nowadays, it's the ADD generation, ADD world. There's no way anyone really thinks of it that way anymore. It's very sad. True. I miss that.
But yeah. I'm glad that you still treat it like an album, because I think, for a lot of us, that's never going to go away, and it's nice to kind of take it all in as one thing rather than this fast food, one bite kind of one song at a time thing, you know. I mean, that has its merits, you know. And for some bands that maybe aren't as prolific, you know, it's probably good for them to put out a little bit at a time. Like, you remember that band from the 90s, Jellyfish?
Of course I do.
Yeah. Well, those
we
guys.
were just talking about them last night.
Oh, love them. You know,
Little Pig, Let Me In.
Yeah.
Not by the hair, that part. Yeah, it's my favorite part.
Yeah, they've got a new group. It's called the Licorice Quartet, and they did a 12-song album. But instead of putting it all out at once, they're going to do it as 3 different EPs of 4 songs every 6 months. And I thought, that's kind of a good way to kind of keep yourself in the public's eye rather than throwing it out and disappearing for 3 years. So that's
totally
interesting vibe to go through. So those were the 2. And now this one, Dustin said had like an extra, what was it, an EP? You like pull back the edge of the brown paper on the edge of the album or the box, and there was a
little hidden 7-inch.
Yeah, well, what was that all about?
It's just another offering that you give to people in the release strategies of things nowadays, just to be creative, and nothing more really. It was just that kind of intention, I suppose.
And how would you describe the vibe of these albums compared to the other ones in the catalog?
Well, for one, I find them to be my favorite. I found that they were a relief for me, production-wise. Because the songs themselves, I think, locked well together. They were exciting and fun, and I was happy with every song on the record, like in the way they turned out. And the sounds were great, and yeah, it was, I think both I like equally for different reasons. Like, It's Not Us, looking at it right now, like, Silent Type off the bat is like this kind of more of a rock pop tune, which I think is great. We kind of represent the more vigorous rock side of things in the jam band world. I take pride in that, and I think it's good that any band can still want to continue to rock nowadays, because I mean, quite frankly, I think rock is kind of few and far between now. I mean, when you think about it, what is a rock band anymore other than like Foo Fighters, and they don't really, to me, qualify as a new band, Right. So like, what the hell is rock, and what happened to it, Yeah, so
underground again.
Silent Type is that way, and Looks immediately is my favorite song, one of my favorite new songs, because it's got sort of this Talking Heads kind of vibe, and the guitar solo Jake plays at the end is absolutely demented and maniacal and twisted and beautiful and everything. I love it. And then Whistle Kids is this cool like kind of almost like 70s funky Paul Simon kind of vibe. Awesome. That Brennan wrote. So yeah, I like the eclecticism, which is Umphrey's, and the set of songs on It's Not Us. Then on It's You, Triangle Tear right out of the gates, it's got a Zappa kind of like Mother's kind of melody in the beginning, and then you get into this like the Who kind of vibe, like a Who rocks like groove. I love it, man. It's exciting. It reminds me of something Keneally would be, all about,
It's awesome.
He like combines elements of that, Seasons is a good one, and Nether is this really wicked, like our version, like something that is more Mastodon-esque,
Yeah, really heavy.
Yes, and dark, and we experiment into that on both of those records. Dark Brush is on It's Not Us as another song. Dark Brush is slow, kind of sludgy metal, like heavy, like almost Meshuggah heavy. Like we don't get to do that too often, and I like when we do that. So
very cool. Okay,
that's good. So do we, the fans. We love it when that happens.
Yeah. What are some of your
favorites? Still waiting for that Nether debut. One day at a time.
Yeah, it's I apologize about that. I don't know why we haven't done it yet. I've been wanting.
No apologies needed. This is part of the fun. I was so convinced that it was going to happen at the Caverns.
Yeah.
This is literally the definition of Nether. And, no, had to swallow my foot on that one.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get around to it.
Justin, what's some of your favorites on those two albums?
I like a lot of them. I like What We Could Get actually a lot.
Oh, cool.
Just because that has a very different melodic vibe, almost kind of like a late 80s, what you would equate to emo back then. Just a very emotive chord progression. But it still has the line of that heaviness that you get with Dark Brush and Nether.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I like that one too.
I love that. That's one that I really would like to see played out more, because I think you guys have only played that a handful of times now. As it's probably not, one of the more like well known off that album, but that's one of my favorites. It's What We Could Get.
Thanks, man. That's cool. It's funny about that one. It's one of our examples I ended up comparing to the melodic side of it, like you were saying, the chord progression, the sonic, melodic factors. I think, and I don't mean by the vocals, but by the guitars, remind me of something like the Deftones.
Yes,
the Deftones,
like White Pony or something.
Yeah, it's kind of a slightly fantasy-like sort of vibe to it, and the progressions, and it's open, open like heavy like distortion, and it's not all chunk going on as much. It's more.
And there's
open.
A juxtaposition between that minor, and then you kind of get a little bit of those major intonations with the chorus.
Yeah.
Juxtaposed with the very, very dark verse very well. I like that a lot.
Thanks, man. That's a Jake song. So you like the Jake songs. This funny thing in our fan base, it's like, it's not a rivalry. It's just but to them, they have their silly little, discussions about not who's better, but who they prefer in songs, either Jake's or Brendan's songs. It's always going to happen to anybody, in most rock bands, like fan bases, they gossip and stuff. And I think that both bring great, different things. This is why we're so eclectic, because we all bring different, unique songwriting qualities to our music, and somehow it works. I don't know how, but it does.
For sure. I love an Emo Bayless song just as much as I love some Jake Shredded. Morning Song is Morning Song's not just one of my favorite songs, but it is one of the songs that's like personally carried me through some very dark times.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I get inspiration from each and every one of you guys separately, as well as just an entity as a whole. So, there's no favorite for me personally.
It's cool of you, man. That means a lot. I appreciate it. You got the spirit. The spirit of what we're about then, because we're not going to be a one-trick pony ever. We're not going to conform to anybody's, preconceived notion of what we should sound like as a jam band, et cetera, et cetera. It's quite honestly just about like, and again, I keep referencing Mike Keneally. He represents a universe of musicians and listeners who think that way as well. So I wish there was more of that in our world, in our life.
Absolutely.
It's tough, but I see a lot of promise in this new wave of jam bands. A lot of the jam bands that we've seen opening up and following you guys, and then a lot of the contemporaries that us and Fuchs are playing with. And it feels like there might be a renaissance coming of a little bit more of that open-mindedness coming to the table.
Sure.
No,
I wouldn't rule it out. Things always come back. They evolve. I'm wondering about when people will enjoy fusion music again, and like the whole, the improvisational interplay between that, which is, again, that brings me to my side project that I've been focusing on, Kick the Cat, my old band. We've got a heavy new release coming out in the near future, and this collection of songs are some of the finest music I've ever played, and the band itself. And I'm very excited about it. And it's indeed in that fusion realm. I think that this will be a breakthrough album, being a part of that revival, of fusion.
I'm excited for that.
Excellent.
Very excited.
So what album was before the most recent ones? Was it Similar Skin, or was there another one in between there?
The fourth most recent.
Zonky. That's right. Right. And this is kind of special because you guys are known for your very creative mashups of songs.
Zonky.
And this is like a collection of some of your favorites over the years that you decided to, or tell us a little bit about the inspiration for choosing the songs for this.
Well, first of all, the mashup concept, as I'm sure you understand, but if any listeners are listening, I'm sure they all mostly know. But for those who don't, it's coming from the DJ culture concept of mashing up instrumental ideas from one cover or one famous song or groove to the a cappella or vocals of another song. And DJs would do that to mix and match and make, mashups. So we would listen to these mashups and be like, why don't we do that as a band? We thought of that concept when we were just playing shows at, weeks on end and just needing to entertain people. And that's another factor in our shows is entertainment versus moody art. It's more about just getting people dancing and having a good time. So we started writing these mashups, and yes, we eventually wrote enough mashups where we ended up having a whole collection of them. At some point we're like, why don't we consider just releasing this? And of course the first concern we had was copyright issues.
Sure.
Because it's like if you're gonna sing the Eurythmics, or if you're gonna sing Radiohead vocals or whatever, you might get in some trouble. But turns out that if you mash up something, that's considered, I think, in the derivative work category. So you're able to do that. And then we also thought, well, what if we do get sued? This could be good for us, meaning good press. And
Right.
the press is good press.
National headlines.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Now, were
So
these
we
all...
did it anyway, and we had the courage to do it, and I'm glad we did. It's actually one of my favorite albums we've ever done.
Now, were
Songs.
these all just live ones that you took and chose and put on a record, or was it like...
Yeah.
Okay, so they're from
Yeah.
different shows over a course of several years, basically?
Yes, the course of several years. Everything's always a course of several years with the jam band world, Sean. Yes.
Oh, yes, this is true. Some solos even.
Yeah. Even solos.
That's right. Okay.
But yeah, that's exactly what we did. And then we just took the most fun or the top faves of those mashup compositions and arrangements, and then we just made a release.
That's awesome.
And we released each song separately, I think per 2 weeks or per month or something like that, which is a smart release strategy nowadays.
Yeah.
Roll something out as singles rather than your album, because people don't. I mean, obviously, I'm a nerd. I buy records. I digest it as an album, but majority of people digest it off streaming services and one track at a time. So that really is the smartest way to release an album.
Yeah.
Just roll it all out.
Dustin,
Totally.
mention a few of the mashups just so our viewers kind of get an idea of what kind of
Some
stuff is being
fantastic
mashed
ones.
together.
They
They all have really cool names once you mash them together.
Yes. Life During Exodus is one of my favorites. So it's Life During Wartime from Talking Heads and Exodus from Bob Marley. I can't remember if you do it on the Zonky album, but live, they also throw in City of Tiny Lights by Frank Zappa into the middle. Kris taking over the vocals on that one usually.
Thank you.
That's always one of my favorite
I love that
mashups.
song. Yeah. Love it.
We got National Loser Anthem, which is really cool. It's a national anthem by Radiohead, which almost an instrumental song. And then Loser by Beck, which is a very verbose song. So that's an interesting, dichotomy that you have those two come together. Another really fun one, I think, because of some of the previous social media things that came up, was the Ace of Long Nights. So I think a lot of Umphrey's fans remembers the infamous Gene Ween, "We don't want to end up sounding like that Umphrey's McGee bullshit" line. And before this came out, I remember y'all playing this and Brandon being like, "How's that for some Umphrey's McGee bullshit?" Taking Ace of Spades and It's Gonna Be a Long Night by Ween, which essentially they're almost the same song. The riff is almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
So it was a natural mesh together. But that whole story with Gene saying that thing, which I found out, everybody found out later, he was just kind of being funny. Yeah, obviously God boner happened, so there's no bad blood there. But
Yes.
that was a fun story behind that one that I like.
Okay.
Frankie Zombie, Frankie Hollywood, and Rob Zombie. You spin me right round, and goodness, what is that? Thunder Kiss. That's right.
Yep.
That's a good one.
That's
Very well
true.
said. Good
Okay.
rundown.
Good. That's a good sampling. So yeah, okay. And then before that was another studio album, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
This one's a
There's
very
similar skin, I believe.
Yeah. Wait, what's this?
Or was it the London one?
Yeah. What's up with that one?
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
when we
London
played
Sessions.
at Abbey Road.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. And was there some original stuff, or was that just kind of reworkings of things you already did?
A little of both. I think it was reworkings of what we've done before, but we might have had some featured new versions, new compositions on those on that album.
And am I right? You did something from Abbey Road, the album covered, like "She's So Heavy" or one of those tunes, or am I?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How could you resist? I mean, being there,
Absolutely.
who wouldn't
Yep,
want to do that?
Well said. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we played it, and it immediately played the song, stopped in the pauses of the songs, and we had to stop. We were just completely just elated on cloud nine, like we cannot believe we're here because when you play it, it's like it sounds, no matter, even if you don't sound like the Beatles, if you play that song in there, you sound like the Beatles.
I can
like
imagine.
It sounds like that in there, and it's like when you play a note and you stop and you listen, it's incredible. You're like, that's the sound,
The very same decay and everything in that room. Yeah, I can.
That's
imagine
right.
It would
Yeah.
just be monumental, man. Wow, so cool that you guys got a chance to do that, because that's like the
I'm
most
very grateful.
famous
Yeah.
studio ever, really. I mean,
And then the studio next to it is the full larger room for orchestras, for scores, and that's where the Lord of the Rings was I guess composed and performed.
Wow. Okay.
Just some local shack for the one of the biggest selling movies
Ever.
It's and they've been doing that stuff there for decades. And what's funny about that place is they will hire you, or they will consider you to book you time if you can pay them what they want.
This is true.
And they will consider you, like they will evaluate what you're doing, but they're not stuck up or exclusive about it.
They aren't. As a matter of fact, a good friend of mine, Fernando Perdomo, who's a fantastic guitar player, and he booked and went and recorded his album there a year ago. It's
That's
like,
cool.
you can do this if you got the
If you could
tunes
just get there
and the money. It's available to anybody, pretty much. So, which you'd never guess. You'd think that's only reserved for elite, but not necessarily. So that's pretty neat. Okay, so Similar Skin. That's this one, gosh, it's been like 5 years already. It seems like that just came out. And time flies.
I know, right?
This one kind of reminded me a bit of Mantis in that it seemed like it was one that really flowed from beginning to end. Whereas like some of the other albums seem more like a collection of songs that don't really have anything to do with each other. Am I off base here? Or?
No, not at all. I agree with you on that.
It just seems to have a certain flow that just kind of goes from beginning to end that really makes it hang together as one cohesive statement, I guess is what I would say.
I think we were still trying to shoot for that concept back then.
Yeah. I think you guys did it really successfully, and there's some great stuff on there. Puppet String, that's always such an amazing tune to hear you guys do. And it's interesting how some things kind of hang around in the live universe for a number of years, and they finally find a home on a studio album.
True.
And there's there's a few things still hanging out there that have yet to find one. Something like Fussy Dutchman. Did that ever find a home on a?
I don't think so. Yeah, that's one of the older songs. We have chosen to not re-record older songs for the reason being that they're just old and a different era of Umphrey's that not necessarily represents where we're going now, because we are an ever evolving thing. And that's a tough one, because some fans do like the older stuff, because some of the older stuff is kind of leaning towards more of what Fish was kind of doing.
Yeah.
And I from my ears, that's just one of 6 of, opinion and perspectives there.
Right.
I just find it to be more Fish-oriented compositional writing ideas in there, because they were influenced by them at a young age.
Sure.
But they were also influenced by Al Di Meola or something else,
Sure.
But like, I found that was more of the fun Fish, like 90s, early, 90s jam band sort of kind of song,
Yeah. Any particular songs stand out for you on Similar Skin now?
Yeah, The Linear. I think The Linear is a fantastic song. I've always been excited about it. And I'm trying to think of a comparison, but like the groove itself is cool. It's kind of melancholy vocals, but the A and B sections of the song are very drastically different, and the A section is really cool, like and kind of streamlined, and it's a different kind of sound and feel for us that I liked at that time. It's kind of like I kept trying to think of the band. I can't think of them. Anyway, but the B section is more rockin', like a Rush kind of rock,
Mm-hmm.
Hearing like an Alex Lifeson kind of ripping solo over it, that's kind of, but it's a clean sound that I like.
Mm-hmm.
That one. And then Educated Guess, I think is great. Police-like vocals with harmonies, like, and going throughout, but fast, kind of syncopated and fast and percussive. I like that one. It's upbeat. Hindsight was our first like dive into like a slow, authentic, dark Quaalude Thunder grunge song. Almost like Alice in Chains kind of vibe meets even like Soundgarden, like it's when they're like at their nastiest, it's like that. We kind of go for that spirit in that song. Bridgeless, we were doing Bridgeless for a long time, long before we even recorded on this record.
My favorite
on that
song,
particular one,
by the way.
And that one's always been good, because that represents the second or third wave of more progressive Umphrey's era. Like, Anchor Drops was starting to show progressive elements, and then, diving into other things after that. Bridgeless was written around like that era, like mid-late 2000s. And so, yeah, those are my handful of favorites. Room to Breathe, I always liked, because it had like this bass line that comes in, the drums come in. It kind of reminds me of like Red Hot Chili Peppers, like the older good stuff.
Yeah, okay.
And then the riffs, that come in, like the vocal, it's more of a Zeppelin-y kind of riff, and then the chorus is more like a Police kind of melody, and the vocal. We're nuts, man. We're just like this mad scientist, sort of creation of so many different things.
Making
All
stuff.
styles go,
Yeah. Okay.
Steam.
Okay. And then before that was Stereo.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh,
Death by Stereo. Yeah.
Death by Stereo was right before that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm looking at like, sometimes we do a lot of other releases between that. The Hall of Fame is one thing we always do, where we pick, it's like a vinyl release we give to an offering to our fans of highlights of their favorite versions, or even our favorite versions of songs live, and we put it all on a compilation.
Okay.
Death by Stereo was in 2011. This was a new direction coming from Mantis prior to that, and it's a completely different sound. It was more about us getting into the era of dancier dance songs like Miami Virtue and Booth Love.
Yeah.
And,
love those.
Yeah.
I really like that album. And this is one where it doesn't seem like a concept. It just seems like a collection of songs, and
sure,
covers a lot of ground, really. Any favorites from that one besides the dancey ones?
Sure, yeah. Search 4. I'd
Oh
say
yeah, that is awesome. I remember that one.
that's a good one for more prog-esque qualities, kind of Tool-esque as well. And then Well Wishers. I think Well Wishers is a hip song. It reminds me of like an old hip Rolling Stones tune, like you know, almost Lou Reed-esque. You know, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, I really like Domino Theory. I thought that was a fun, crunchy one.
Yeah, Domino Theory. That's another one. Yeah,
That great
that
bass
one's
line.
excellent, actually. Yeah.
That bass line, it sounds that bass line sounds like he's playing a yo-yo. Where it kind of slings out and goes a little further each time he plays that lick. You know.
Yeah, that's a great way of describing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like. It's kind of punky, you know, edgy.
Yeah, I thought that was a fun one. Okay, and then before that was Mantis. Yeah.
Yep.
Now was this meant to be kind of your progressive concept album? Because it kind of feels like one, and a lot of my prog head friends really mentioned that album. Like when the next one came out, they didn't know quite what to make of it, and then Similar Skin came out, and they're like, "Oh yeah, here we go," you know. So
cool.
You know.
Yeah, we went through a lot of phases, a lot of maybe trial and error, maybe whatever you would call it. Mantis was definitely a concept album. We wanted it to be almost like, and not to sound like in Spinal Tap terms, but almost like a rock opera, in the sense of the thematic intentions of it. I think that it was a good departure from us going from this somber subject, lyrical content, and vibe of Safety in Numbers prior to that, because during that time, some guys in their band were going through a rough time with a divorce and other issues, and we were writing about it, and kind of going, and instead of being taking that and making it more of an high energy direction from Anchor Drops, we went into this sort of somber phase for a while, and then after that we're like, fuck that, let's rock now. And then back to Mantis. Mantis has some more hard rock kind of majestic sort of moments, but it also has Beatles-esque moments, or even moments where you're hearing I'm trying to think of examples, but if you listen to an ELO record, you're always listening to everything, and that's kind of what we wanted for Mantis. And we recorded it at Electric Audio Studios in Chicago, which is owned by Steve Albini, who of course had all his history with Nirvana and a lot of grunge acts, and him being a punk bass player as well. So yeah, we're recording at that studio. With that experience was really amazing, and we were working with Manny Sanchez for many of these records, and we got deep with him in the production part of it, and it was really fun.
Yeah. Well, that one, I think that's the one that the progressive rock fans would probably go for first, but it's not just that. I mean, there's a lot of variety on it. Trying to remember, the title track is pretty epic, progressive stuff, I'd say.
Yeah. Mantis itself. Yeah.
Cemetery Walk, is that it? Cemetery Gates? No.
Cemetery Walk and Cemetery Walk 2. Yeah. That's on there. That's that's kind of a nice murky rock tune that kind of got a Genesis vibe to it.
Yeah.
Old school Genesis. I found that Mantis was probably the most prominent on that record, because we had really excellent strings on there. There was a string player that put together great chamber works on it, and that kind of created the Yes sort of vibe to it.
Okay.
Which was good.
Now, how do you guys go about piecing together something that long with that many parts? I mean, does it take months to kind of meld it into shape? I mean, it seems like a lot of those parts could be put in a lot of different orders. So how do you decide? How does that kind of come together?
Yeah, it comes together sometimes through someone's personal artistic direction as the composer, or from start to finish. Oftentimes it's somebody or a couple of people coming together with compositions
of which they leave it sections open to interpretation, and then we work it out together, slowly, manually, tediously, backstages, or at home when we were around together more in Chicago at a rehearsal spot or something.
I mean, does it ever boil down to like a dry erase board and each section has a name and it's kind of like, let's put this, here, kind of see how it lines up on paper before you go and do it. Yeah. I've written a few things that are 10 minutes long too. And it seems like some of them took 6 months to decide what order to put it all in. And then you got to teach it to the band, and
it's a process.
It definitely is, but it's pretty rewarding once it's finally under everybody's belt, and you get to play it out live for the first time. That's always kind of a thrilling moment.
It totally is. That's, I think, some of the more thrilling moments for most musicians, I think, is to play new stuff.
Yeah, and just those first 10 times or so, it's like just the first time's amazing, and then you get a little tighter, a little better, it almost seems like it kind of peaks around the 10th one in some cases, and then it's the thing of legend.
I think that it's important to play the song out a little bit after you've already gotten through that process of how it's supposed to flow, compositionally speaking. Once you get out to play it a while, then you do that for a while, then you record it later after that.
Yeah, it always gets better. If you just kind of cooked it up and recorded it in the studio, I think it just doesn't gel. It's almost like cooking a meal and leaving it in the fridge overnight, and it all kind of gels, and then you reheat the leftovers, and they're so good, Yeah. Lasagna is like that, so, it's just like, I'm glad we waited. Okay.
You chance to market test your ideas with the audience,
Yeah,
that's
just
true.
see how they react to the way it all unfolds before them.
Like, that line is stupid. I'm like, oh shit, okay, I didn't think of that. Maybe I should check out something.
Or they really went batshit when we got to that part,
Exactly. Or like, oh, we're on to something with this vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, that's actually kind of how it goes sometimes for us. We have been so open to our fan base, where sometimes we leave it up to them to literally give us feedback of what they think of this or that. And it's like, it's gotten to that point, for better or worse.
Sure. Okay. Alrighty. And so before that, was it Anchor Drops? Oh, no, wait, you're right. Safety in Numbers. That's right. And this one's kind of a sleeper in your catalog, I think. I think sometimes it's not quite as over the top as some of the other ones. It's more about melodic, kind of almost pop songs in a way.
All about the heart.
I mean, there's a couple kind of progressive tunes on there as well that are pretty ambitious. But
I'd say one for one. I mean, Believe the Lie is it's like kind of like more of an aggressive punk-esque kind of beat, but then like we applied the Umphrey's formula to it, and it became kind of a progressive song in the way that we would play these riffs within section to section, because we never did anything back then when we were writing stuff that was more progressive. I've often find it when you're a young writer and you're going at a young age trying to write progressive music, you kind of go through trial and error by like doing something that seems difficult for difficult sake.
Sure.
And it's a little bit conjoined, like you decide, let's make this one extra 8th note or 16th note or a few 16th notes extra of a phrase other than the 4/4 that's in, because we can't have it in just 4/4. We have to make it more complicated, but why? Oh, just cause,
right. And then sometimes it's like, look, we're doing 7, and it's kind of like
that too.
Yeah,
It's like there are other ways to phrase it, but people do it that way. It's like almost like Prague for Dummies. Remember those old books?
It's funny. Marco Miniman, he has a trio called the Aristocrats, and they have a tune called Stupid 7. So that kind of tells you what he thinks of that, It's like so obvious,
Yeah. It's just, it makes it stiff, when you play it the same way, because it's supposed to be universal, But I mean, anyway, so like we wrote back then to be quirky and difficult for difficult sake, but I think it was still good enough to say that they were, when I still listen to it, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool, Like we'll do a riff,
a 7 a couple times, and then we'll go a section in 5 or 4, and then bring it back to the, but do it subtly, We
Sure.
don't go nuts. We just.
No, I mean, I think the best uses of odd meters are when you don't even realize they're happening a lot of times.
Oh yeah.
I think that's,
Yeah.
and, making
There it is.
smooth like that is the work of pros. Yeah.
That's the way Vinny played with Frank's music. Vinny was that way as a drummer.
And also, I think it boils down to syncopation. I mean, you look at a group like Gentle Giant, they're considered some of the most, straight up prog rock you can get your hands on. But the majority of their stuff's in 4/4, and it was just a matter of how they syncopated things that made it sound odd, even though it wasn't. So people thumb their noses at 4/4, but they shouldn't, because it's all down to your own imagination and ingenuity. Yeah, you can make it quite interesting.
Yeah, I don't know who would want to thumb their nose or whatever, or turn their nose up towards 4/4. That seems silly to me.
Oh yeah,
it's all about the feel, and no matter what kind of eclectic linear pattern you're trying to dig on, that pattern still has to be felt, and you can apply it over 4/4, and it's still just as interesting. So
sure,
some people get so snobby about stupid things that don't really. It's so micro, and it's so what's the word?
They're
insignificant.
I think it all boils down to trying to be too clever for your own good, and
It
happens a lot in prog, and I think it's kind of the folly of youth also. You're
right,
young, and you're just trying to show the world everything you can do in 5 minutes.
Something to prove.
How to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Anchor Drops. That's a biggie for you guys. I'd have to say that was kind of a plateau. Would you
man,
agree?
it was my first record.
My favorite.
It was my debut. Yeah. Oh, there! Look at you. You got it to vinyl.
I want that.
Yeah, we remastered that this year. That was a release this year. Yeah, Anchor Drops was such great memories for me, because it was the childhood for me and Umphrey's McGee.
Right.
And I just joined, and I was still fresh out of the graduate phase of my life, and I was still learning about how it all works. And we recorded this whole album this is a funny story, in a building actually at the intersection of Ashland and Milwaukee Avenue and Division, where all 3 of those streets intersect in Chicago. And it was on the 3rd or 4th floor. There used to be an old abandoned studio. Now, remember the word abandoned, because there's a reason for it. Okay. We get there, we rent the gear to go into there and do the whole production. We're like, this will be great. We'll do it on totally grassroots style from the ground up. We're going to bring our gear in, and we're going to just set up our own gear and record for a week and have the whole place down to ourselves, or a couple weeks maybe. And we did that. And when we set everything up, the guitarists turn on their amps, and all they hear is every single time. And we're like, oh no, what did we just do? What happened? There's a magnetic field issue in the building with the electricity. So that was the reason why the studio was abandoned. Okay. But it was this space with a window in the wall, and for the console and everything. We had no idea. So we had to recut the guitars somewhere else, I think, but we recorded the sessions anyway with the drums, and it turned out to be a really cool recording. It was fun. I think I was a little more of a disciplined player back then, so I was playing a little more solid, straight ahead in some ways, and I enjoyed that young energy of that album, and it was fun too. It was playful, and it has my favorite Umphrey song, which is Plunger.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I like that.
Were most of those written before you came on board, or did it all kind of get written with you in the fold?
This was the first album that every song was written with me in the fold.
Okay.
Wife Soup was the first song written about me being in the band. Some of the lyrics, and one of them that I can relate to is "It's all your circus now," which Brennan was saying to me is sort of a tip of the hat.
you know. And then there's every single, I think Uncommon was a song written before I was in the band. Jajunk was another one. And then 13 Days. But I think I was a part of most of the songs otherwise.
Yeah. Any thoughts on Miss Tinkle? Because I think that's one of your epic tunes. And
well, you know what it's about, right? Maybe not.
Well, fill us in for anybody that doesn't.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. It's not like you would know. Miss Tinkle's Overture is a funny twist on a funny event that where the keyboardist sometimes these guys would have to go on drives and not stop, and between cities, and they would have, you know, if they have to go to the bathroom, that piss, they'd have to piss in bottles.
Sure.
At times, and one time, one of the band members missed a couple times, and some of the stream of it went onto one of the pillows of the the pillows in the van, and sure enough, you know, we I think the person that was caught in the act, someone else said, "Hey, you know, we saw that," and then he turned the pillow over and then like pretended like that didn't happen. That just became the beginning of a brunt of a joke that we wrote the song Miss Tinkle's Overture. And it's an instrumental.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that still seems like a big crowd favorite. Am I right? All these years
Yeah.
later.
Yeah, it's one of them.
Favorite.
It's a classic.
Very much. Yeah. Another one, Billy, Ocean Billy. I mean, what's the title for that? I mean, is it just a pun on Billy Ocean, basically?
Basically.
Okay.
But you know, there's also a side of us that doesn't have too much concept with our song titles. It's just we just think of a title and then just name the song that, you know, and that's an example of that.
Well, I know how that is. I mean, I have times where it's just like the song's done and it's like in the next 5 minutes I'm going to think up a name for it. And that, you know, it's like I probably could have come up with something better later. I'd have to say the same for the name of my band, which is called Story of a Life, which is what the show's named after, SOAL Night Live. Because the first couple, the first couple episodes, it was just me talking with my bandmates, and then I thought, well, you know, I should invite some people on. I've got some great musical friends on Facebook, and you know, it kind of grew out of that, you know. Gotcha. So, but I just left the name of it, you know, and in a way, this is kind of a story of someone's life. Every one of these episodes is kind of a little biographical chat. So I think it kind of almost fits the show better than the band, but
agreed.
It's all
no, I mean, I know what you mean. And yeah, that's the way we were too. Like most bands do that, you know, they just don't need to always have too much thought into tying the title of the song with the, you know, with the lyrical content.
Yeah, it's rock and roll, you know, no need to get too deep. So any thoughts on the albums before you came along? I imagine you played a lot of that music over the years. And well, what was the one before this? Was it Band Does Okay?
Yeah, Local Band Does Okay, which was Mike Miro, the previous drummer. And that was my introduction to the band. I never heard of anything that they ever did, except the very first song I heard was the first title of that album, which is Andy's Last Beer. And that comes in with this riff, fades in on the album that's kind of maniacal and cool, and it reminds me of King Crimson immediately. And I'm like, oh, I could definitely get into this. And then it builds and builds. I'm like, yes. And then it goes like into another chord to start the verse groove. And it's like this total like crunchy, heady fish groove. I was like funk groove. And I was like, whoa, I didn't see that coming.
Right.
And then listened over and over. And then, then they get into some like progressive time meter and some of the guitar solos and parts, after the chorus, second chorus or whatever. And I'm like, this is pretty hip. These guys are very creative and they're clever with their tag phrases in between sections and then like all that. And I'm like, they sound like they're educated players, and that was what I was listening to because my friend Brian Abraham was the one who told me about the band auditioning drummers, and I had started listening before I auditioned. So I dug it. This was the first listen. And that, yeah, Local Bandos Decay was the first album introducing me to the band.
Okay. Any favorite tunes that you like to play live on that one?
Yeah, I like White Man's Moccasins. I think that's a very interesting song. It's a very well constructed song. I wish we did it more, but some of the guys are not always into it because they think too much progressive is not fun, you know.
All right, gotta strike.
I disagree, but Second Self was another one I like. Or Roulette. Actually, there's a lot of good songs on that album. I like Second Self and Roulette and White Man's Moccasins. And you know, Blue Echo's cool.
Yeah, I love Blue Echo.
You know, so in Ringo, good old Ringo. I like Ringo. Yeah, that's a good album, actually.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious what spawned the hour and 15-minute Ringo from this last New Year's Eve run. Was that
I don't know.
It was a decision or
to just keep going and feel good?
I think it was a little bit of that, and maybe a little bit of somebody requesting us to stay on one song longer. I don't know if that, we always have to factor in fan requests because it's gotten out of control. We get like fan requests for almost every night we play our shows, and we want to give back to the fan base, and that's how you build your fan engagement and loyalty, by fulfilling those, you know, as many as you can, all of their requests. Of course, not all of them will be fulfilled, but that was, I think, a decision based off of in the moment, and then also some fan requests, perhaps.
Yeah, before going on stage that you're going to play this whole set out, or did it just kind of happen that way in the moment?
Yeah, it was in the moment, I think.
Okay.
For how the length of it, like we wanted to play it longer, and that's all we instructed ourselves to do in the set list. But
Right.
then it ended up going longer than we thought.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Now, I'm curious, you know, you guys are, you know, a lot of bands go out and they play the same songs every night, but you guys consistently change the set list up. How do you keep it all at the ready when you have that many songs to choose from?
In the ready, like in terms of
I think some things that you hadn't played for 6 months, you might need to get in a practice room and rehearse before you just do it again on stage. So how do you keep that all kind of, you know, ready to go? Or do you have some deep practice sessions where you need to dust off the cobwebs and the rust?
What we always do is, you know, I think in addition to being responsible about rehearsing on our own time, we also go rehearse every day before the show, like for at least an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, and that gets us all together, our minds together, to like go over all the motions and the parts. But when you've played these songs as many times as we have, it's there. Trust me. I mean,
even a stash of 50 to 100 is pretty much at the ready to go anytime. Well, that's great. And, you know, that's one of the fun things about going to see you guys is you never know what to expect. And every night kind of has a different vibe. Like some nights you guys get kind of in a dancey mood and it's more EDM, and other nights it's maybe a little more prog. It kind of, is that ever planned in advance? It's like, oh, we're at this festival with a bunch of happy hippies. Let's go EDM tonight versus,
absolutely.
Here we are at the prog festival. We better play the tricky stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that's definitely a factor in how we write our set lists. It's the environment, really, you know, where we're at. The atmosphere.
Well, that's good that you have a feel for whatever, almost like you put your finger up and go, okay, this is the way the wind's blowing today. Let's do that. That's great.
I'm grateful that we can do that in a career that we're in.
Well, that must be
very grateful
so much more exciting. I mean, I remember Bill Bruford was talking about how he left Yes because they reached a point where they, you know, expected him to just pull the same rabbit out of the same hat every night. And he's not about that, you know. And I would think, you know, it would almost be kind of limiting if you were in a band that only had 30 songs and you played them the same every night. Or even if you didn't play the same every night, it would be pretty boring to be stuck in that limited selection.
And those better be some damn good songs.
Yeah,
That's
right.
all I gotta say.
Yeah. I think people are going to come back and watch that every year. And, you know, you got to give them something new to get excited about. So Dustin, you had some more questions. What's on your list there?
I've got a few questions here. It's like one thing that I really dug about this last year is y'all bringing Breaker back into the fold after kind of it being, in nowhere land for a couple of years. Like, what are some songs that you would like to bring back out of the fold of the Umphrey's deep cut catalog?
Oh man, that's a deep question, because there's a lot of newer little semi-songs that we've written, but we had the title. They just were Stewart's originally, and then we ended up naming them for them being a studio Stewart. Mm-hmm. I have to think about that one. There's just a lot of new stuff that we've been doing lately and working on that I'm forgetting the previously new stuff.
Right.
So I couldn't tell you, man. I wish I could answer that. I think, what was the one that you mentioned?
Breaker.
That's a good one. I would say Breaker, and I'm not just saying that like to get away with this. I remember Breaker, and I do like Breaker, and I think that would be one that we should play more in the rotation. Yeah, for sure.
I absolutely love that song, and I didn't even really hear it the first couple times you'd played it, because I think you'd only played it 2 or 3 times, and Brandon and Jake played it at one of their shows. But Mark played me the one from Miami from last year. I was just like, what is this song? Like the energy and the drive and the potential of those breakaway kind of light choruses. I mean, each one of those could just be a 10-minute jam unto their own.
Yeah, we're in the process of we're trying to sift through some of these things that we haven't recorded yet and maybe make full songs out of them. That's one of them. Another one I was just thinking of too, Stinko's Ascension is a funny name, but it's the one that I like as well.
Love that one.
It's kind of got like a more high energy, like Foo Fighters sort of drive to it, which I like doing that stuff a little more these days. I'm not always into doing long wispy funk jams,
Right.
I do like doing that for moments because funk is awesome, and it's a big part of my history of playing. But I mean, I want to just go batshit crazy sometimes and just lay down some heavy, hard, some fucking fun rock, like surf rock, get people going, instead of all this like meandering. We don't really meander too much. We do our best to make things flow. Yeah. And that's why people who follow us, they understand that and they get it. Sometimes other bands from different jam cultures don't get it and they don't like it. There's certain elements they don't like too much heavy guitar or too much soloing. But you see, that's rock and roll. That's the way we do it. We throw that in there for a reason. And
about you guys in particular, I always dug jam bands and was interested in it, but nothing hooked me until it was like, oh, you can do this wide open improvisation, but also swing your balls around.
Yeah. Yeah. And just be versatile with your tastes. I wish people were more versatile. It's okay, though.
Me too.
It's all right, though. I'm very grateful either way,
So I got a question for you. What's the most wasted audience you guys have played for? And my second part of the question is there ever been a time when you guys had the urge to indulge as well?
Well, yes, to that, of course, we have, and we've considered it, and we have. We haven't indulged in too many specific things that you probably want to stay away from while you play. Any kind of uppers will make you speed up, play sporadically, and then, or be kind of hectic or frantic or anxious.
Sure.
And then, of course, anything like an opiate, which is not something anybody has fucked with, and I'm very happy with that. That leads to other problems. I've seen people nod off while they're playing. You don't want to do that.
No.
That's no good.
No.
But other recreational things in the past when we were younger were fun for certain festivals where the environment lends itself to that. Sometimes Electric Forest is great for the environment like that, where you want to feel a little bit of a certain transcendence with a little bit of enhancement. And that's
if you want to try that, I personally can't do that live with my band, with Umphrey's, and don't do it anymore. But even back when I did or tried to, like, I just can't. I couldn't, because it's too many things to remember, too many cues for our music. So because we're trying to entertain and create that experience for other people to enjoy and have their escapism. As far as the most wasted crowd, we've had a lot of them. That's for sure. We still do. I mean, the experience can be different. Could be people on, like, different types of synthetic or psychedelic kind of drugs at certain festivals, and then there's some where there's just it's just a drinking, schwilly mess,
Right.
Like frat parties,
Right.
college shows. When we were like the 2003 to 5 or 3 to 4 era, those 2 years, we were still playing the college towns, and man, there were some incredibly fun nights, but so it was just like a drunken fiasco.
Sure.
Especially if we played in Alabama, Auburn, Birmingham, Atlanta, anywhere like Athens as well. Athens to me was always fun.
Yeah.
Immaturity.
What was that?
Fun, but always a shit show of immaturity.
Toward the end of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
beginning
it
of the night,
depends-
it's always a great time.
And it depends on if you're playing during a game weekend. If it's a game weekend, it's definitely going to be a shit show,
That's true.
So then, I'd say, Camp Bisco can be one where you see like the largest population of people under the influence at your show, and really getting into it, and it's fun sometimes,
Sure.
Some Northern California festivals have been that way, but it's more about the lifestyle there. So it's not like people are like raging, It's like it's more of a moderate kind of rage.
Do you guys ever play to like just a seated audience? Like I remember you guys were going to play at Nearfest, and then it didn't pan out for various reasons, mostly.
I always found the Nearfest thing funny, because the guys that were running that were I don't know their names, but they came to us at a hotel backstage or some backstage thing one time, hanging out with Joel, and they're like, and it was like I don't know what year it was, but they mentioned, so we're thinking about getting you in on the slot after all this talk all night, like how great it's gonna be. So we're thinking about getting you in about, say, maybe 5 years from now. We're like, and they were serious, and we were like, what? What the hell?
Like, will we even remember then?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Will you even be at festival then? I don't know.
Yeah, but it's like, have you guys ever played to like a seated audience at a theater where everybody's sober?
Yes. In fact, yeah, we have a couple times. And you know what?
Shows feel a little weird.
I personally am okay with it, but yes, it feels weird for Brendan. Feels weird for the guys up front. But I'm behind the drums, and I feel cozy, like I'm drinking coffee and listening to NPR, like I'm digging this, This is nice. Like I'm playing to a jazz audience.
Very air
People are
conditioned.
hearing every little element of what we're doing, and they're not sitting there like gossiping and over talking with each other and like, acting, goofy. They're sitting and they're listening to everything we're doing. I love doing those kind of shows because it's like a jazz show. It's very intimate. It's art. It's all about the art,
Yeah.
And we did oh boy, I can't remember the name of the show, but I believe it's where Prairie Home Companion used to play. It's like maybe the NPR studios in West Virginia. Gosh.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, we played in that room, and that sounded great. And we've done a couple sit-down performances, like, where the sound is just, the sound's got to be really dialed in for those kind of shows.
Sure. But
Yeah.
once it is,
Yeah,
it's really nice.
Yeah, it's few and far between.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Dustin, you got anything else?
Let's see what I got on here. So we mentioned before that you were in a ska band back in high school. I'm also from the Midwest, so I grew up in the whole '90s ska scene.
Nice.
Like, what is one of your favorite bands personally from that era?
Let's see. I liked the Toasters.
Fuck yeah,
I thought they were killer.
they're really good.
I like them. I mean, they were the more commercial version that some of the, hardcores like say, ew, gross or whatever. But I really liked the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones.
One of my
I just
favorite.
think they were awesome. They were so high energy, and they brought that. And Dickie's voice is just like no other. It's like the the Louis Armstrong of the ska scene.
Yeah, he really is.
Yeah.
They were great because they brought that metal element to what was usually a very light and, happy-go-lucky kind of sound.
Yeah.
And they were going with that demon metal, which is something I really see in Umphrey's, is just that juxtaposition of genres.
Totally. Yeah, juxtaposition. And that's what a lot of those 90s bands that were considered ska were doing. And that was why I said ska core. Ska core was considered that, like Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, No Effects,
Mephistopheles,
Operation Ivy.
Yeah.
Mephistopheles is actually another one that's my favorite. They're fantastic, man.
Yeah. I love them.
I like them a lot. And then Skank and Pickle.
Yeah.
Remember them? MU330 was great. Yeah, their singer was outrageous.
They had some of the best melodic songwriting of the ska genre, I really think.
Yeah, man. I liked it. It's a lost era, lost art.
Yeah. It really
even Gwen Stefani was a part of it when she was,
no doubt.
even before No Doubt.
No doubt about that.
Yeah. Like Safe Ferris, I guess she was her band at that time. And my friend from Chicago was still playing with them in recent times.
Nice.
So yeah, I think they're still like playing, I guess. And yeah, I don't know. There's so many to name. I mean, it's Scapone was a band from Chicago. Scapone, and then I mean the Eclectics. I mean, there was just all kinds of random. And this was even at a time when, Apocalypse Hoboken, like punk bands were playing like locally in Chicago. Yeah. There was a really deep scene of that there. Like,
it's huge.
At that time. So it was really easy to get lost into it, And I wanted to go that direction, but I just kind of outgrew it. Jazz took over once I got into school.
It's more free, more expression.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, ska is still just a fun, really high energy thing to revisit. But I find it very interesting that you came from that background, particularly being from the Midwest as well.
Right. I was also like going to see bands that are, to me, one of the most unique movements that you can't really put a category on. It's that good. Is Tortoise.
Yes. Oh my God. TNT is one of my favorite albums of all time.
Awesome.
Love Tortoise.
Man, that's good. That's really good for you to know them, because you can't find bands too often that are like literally something of their own style, of their own movement nowadays. And Trans Am was also another cool band that I still like to this day. I think they were all part of Thrill Jockey Records, I think was the name of the record company. Mm-hmm. And yeah, those Tortoise guys are kind of still around doing stuff, but not as a band. Them on
an opening. You had them for an opening leg, didn't you, at one point?
Sure, because we were fans, and I really don't know how well received it was with our jam crowd. Sometimes that's frustrating.
I wish I was there, because I'd have been front row. Like, yes, thank you.
Yeah. Sometimes, we've had some really cool opening acts, but it's not always big with our fans because it doesn't sound like something that they relate to jam-wise. So
right.
It's that kind of frustrates me, because it's like that shows that even the cultures can be a little narrow-minded, mm-hmm. but it's okay though. It's understandable. But I was hoping that we could present some cool acts that doesn't have to be a part of our sound, just to show music. Like, I like those kind of shows put together where it's more about an art community, like putting together different types of art work together, as opposed to one, popular culture movement.
like the Acoustic Planet tour that you guys did, where it was Bela Fleck and Baloo and you guys. Like, you could not have three more stylistically different bands that fit so perfectly well together, which was shown by the seamless transition between, I think, I saw the Chastain show. I believe it was Baloo segued into you guys, and then y'all segued into Bela Fleck, and then it segued into a super jam with members from each and every member of that of all the bands.
Yeah, I remember that. That was awesome.
That was absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was. We've had a lot of good opening. We've had a lot of good acts we've opened for and opening acts. It was an interesting thing when we opened up for Dave Matthews. It was an incredible experience because you got to appreciate and love that environment. Maybe if like the audience is not like your cup of tea, it's still more about just the experience. It was incredible. Like, and Dave is a super nice guy. He's kind of eccentric and weird, but he's really nice. Like, and he announces you before you go on the stage, and I mean, I think that's really great. Anyway, yeah.
Well, guys, it's getting kind of late. We should probably wrap it up. But,
it is.
but time flies once we get rolling on here, man.
I appreciate
2 or 3 hours or whatever. It just flies by. So, well, thank you so much for being part of this, Kris. We'd have lots of cool stuff to talk about and catch up on. So it's been good to catch up with you. And excited to see what you guys do next. And hopefully, things will get to the point where we can see you live again sometime soon. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
No
we're all ready too, man. So ready.
Cool. All right. Well, cool beans.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both so much. Thank you, Dustin. It's always a pleasure to chat with you,
Thank
brother.
you, Sean. Thank you, Kris.
It's my pleasure, Dustin.
All right. Well, next week, guys, we have a show about Progressive Ears, the 20-year-old progressive rock forum that I founded on a lark that's still kicking all these years later. So all my founders and moderators over the years are going to get together and we're going to reminisce about the good, bad, and the ugly side of progressive rock fandom on the internet. Yeah, you can imagine. We've all seen forums. After that, I've got original Alice Cooper drummer Neil Smith will be my guest on the 29th. A special pop-up interview that will happen around 2 p.m. And then later in the day, my guest is a sideman who you might not know. His name's Lyle Workman, who play with Todd Rundgren and Sting and Jellyfish and some other groups. So excited to see what he's up to. He has a new album he just did at Abbey Road with a 30-piece orchestra with Vinnie Colaiuta on drums. So sounds pretty ambitious. Yeah. So, all right, you guys take care, stay safe, and stay in touch.
Bye, gentlemen.
Talk to you soon. Thanks, Kris.
Thank you so much, guys.
All righty. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, man. Talk to you soon.
All right.